Hi, this is Vicki Wilson of the Victoria Wilson Foster Hirsch podcast, here to introduce episode 6 on the art of the arts. Today we're going to be talking about a spectacular movie, a very special movie, Jean Renoir's masterpiece, The River. It was a picture that was made in 1951. It was Renoir's first color film. The first Technicolor film made in India, which was not an easy feat by any means in 1951. And it's the first movie that Renoir made after fleeing Hollywood and being tortured there for 5 years as he tried to make pictures the way he wanted to make pictures, which didn't exactly jibe with the way Hollywood wanted pictures to be made. So he left, he found this book, which we will discuss. And the picture is adapted from Rumer Godden's autobiographical novel about a British family living in India. And it's shot by Renoir's great cinematographer nephew, Claude Renoir. It's a coming-of-age story of a young girl growing up in India, in Bengal, who with her family live on the banks of the holy Ganges River. Her father runs a jute mill, and she and her sisters and brother and 2 friends live an idyllic life of wonder and adventure and bliss. Suddenly, a stranger arrives, a much older American, a Captain John, a dashing war hero recuperating from a serious wound, who comes to visit his cousin, who is their neighbor. And we see slowly how their blissful, expansive life in this Bengal paradise is upended as each of the young girls is smitten with strange emotional longings and overtaken by mysterious jealousies that ambush each towards one another, and how their previously implacable bonds are slowly fractured. And the movie shows how each is caught up in these strange feelings as well as mysterious desires of young love, and comes face to face with some of life's darkest mysteries. At the heart of the picture is human yearning and the cycle of life and death, which the river reveals so simply, so powerfully. It's about the continuance of life, death, birth, renewal, and purification as the world spins on. The day ends, the day begins, a death, and new life. The River was a big success for Renoir. The film made $16 million. It won the 1951 International Award at the Venice Film Festival. Renoir said that although The River looks like one of the most contrived of his films, it is the one that is actually the closest to nature. Rumer Godden said that working with Renoir was the best and richest period I've spent. Said Godden, "Nowhere does anyone speak words they could not in real life have said, and with this reality, I believe," said Godden, "we achieved the quality we wanted and timelessness of a spell." And that is what The River accomplishes. We are like the cobra in the garden, hypnotized by the music of Renoir's transporting movie, as we are put under its spell, one that opens our heart and that deeply touches the soul. So here is episode 6 of the Victoria Wilson Foster Hirsch podcast on the art of the arts, Jean Renoir's The River. Hi, everybody. Hi, Foster. Here we are.
Hi, Vicki. Here we are again.
Back in podcast land. And we're up to episode 6, which is very exciting. And today we're continuing on with our Renoir saga. and we're going to be talking about Après le déluge, which was after what happened to Monsieur Renoir after Woman on the Beach. And fortunately for him, he found a fabulous autobiographical novel by Rumer Godden and went off to India to make this spectacular movie. Lots to discuss.
Lots to discuss.
And so off we go into the Ganges.
Don't we want to start, Vicky, with talking about the producer of this film?
I think it's a good story, so let's do that.
It's a good story. Kenneth McEldowney, who was a Beverly Hills florist. And we were talking last time about how the Renoirs loved living in Beverly Hills, which I think is great. They lived near the Beverly Hills Hotel. Madame Renoir just loved being in Beverly Hills. And they socialized. And they met this florist who was very prominent, Mr. McEldowney, and he provided the flowers for the first Oscar program at the Roosevelt Hotel in 1929. And he provided the flowers for the funerals of, among others, Jean Harlow and Al Jolson. And he was a moviegoer.
And don't forget Irving Thalberg.
And Irving Thalberg, yes. He was a moviegoer. He was very sociable. People in Beverly Hills knew him. And he loved this novel, Rumer Godden, and so did...
But wait a minute, I have to interrupt for 1 second before we go on with how the two got together. What I found most interesting about him is that he introduced a flower by wire service that became FTD. It became FTD, which was amazing. And he also started the first drive-through flower shop at the corner of Pico Boulevard and Beverly Drive.
I believe there is still a flower shop at that corner. I'm going to check the next time I'm in town. I believe there is. But do you know how the inspiration to making a film came from his wife, who was a publicist at MGM? And Mr. McEldowney complained about an MGM film. And she got a little huffy and she said, well, why don't you make one that's better? And wouldn't you know it? He did. It took him 5 years, apparently, to get the financing and get everything together to make this film in India. But he and Renoir worked for a number of years to get this financed. And then they went to India, and it was the first color film shot in India. And it was a huge success. And Mr. McEldowney said, that's it. I proved I could do it. I'm not making another film. And he went on to make a fortune in real estate. But that was it.
Well, you know, he was an I think he was an ex-Air Force person. And he had been in India and wanted to make a movie about it. But he didn't know anything about making movies. He didn't have a director. He didn't have a story. He didn't have anything. And Jean Renoir found the way, I will tell this story, that the way Jean Renoir found the river was that he was reading a review in the New Yorker, a book review of the of Rumer Godden's novel. And it said that, I actually have the review, of course, and it said that it's one of the most exquisitely written books and in the English language, and it won't make a penny. And Renoir was smitten with the description, went and read the book, and then had his agent get in touch with Rumer Godden, who, interestingly, like Willa Cather, after Black Narcissus, Godden had said, no more movies are to be made from my books, because she was so upset with what Powell and Pressburger did, because she thought, I love Black Narcissus and think it's magical and totally stylized.
It's a great film. It's a great film.
She, however, felt betrayed by it, because she thought not 1 ounce of it is true. And we can go tell the whole story, but the point is that Renoir basically talked to her and said, we can't take the book and translate it literally to the screen, but we will take the spirit of it and put the book on the shelf, and you have to come and write it. And he said, you have to come to Beverly Hills. And
he said, you must come to Beverly Hills and write the script. And I thought, well, I don't know how to write a script. I've never tried. And he said, never mind, no one else is going to write it but you.
And she did, and she lived there with them, and she wrote the script with him. And what I think is what makes this movie is that there were these two exquisite sensibilities that came together, and each allowed the other the air and the freedom and the love of art and the belief in the spirit of this book to create this extraordinary. It isn't just the script.
By the war. And he thought that this little book was a book of reconciliation. He called it an act of love towards childhood and India.
Because then they went to India together and how they worked together.
That's another matter. But in working on the script, Rumer Godden allowed Renoir to introduce new characters and to make a lot of changes. She obviously really trusted him over that course of time working together. And so she was not protective in the sense that it had to be exactly as she'd written it. There are new characters, there are new relationships in the film that don't appear. But it keeps the spirit of the novel completely intact. The spirit is translated. I just read the book again and saw the film again, and they're very close while acknowledging that there are major differences. But both of them sign the screenplay. It's by Renoir and Rumer Godden. They're the co-authors of the screenplay.
Well, the thing that also, when I saw the movie, I thought, oh my God, which I said in episode 5, when I talked about the narration, which is so, to me, beautiful, beautifully written and simple, and just frames the movie so perfectly.
It was one of the many holy rivers. Its waters came from the eternal snows of the Himalayas and emptied into the Bay of Bengal. The river had its own life. Fishes and porpoise, turtles and birds, and people who were born and lived and died on it. It flowed slowly between banks of mud and white sand, rice fields and jute fields. The jute grew in flat marshes, nourished by monsoon floods. Country boats of all shapes and sizes brought the jute to the factories. Some of them came from as far away as Assam and Chittagong and the borders of Burma, through the winding arteries of the Delta.
And then I said to my book group, well, let's read the river. And in reading the river, I discovered that it was clear that Godden had written that narration for the movie, because most of it is not in the book.
Most of it is not in the book.
Father owned the jute press. She'd been to school in England. They were rich. She was an only child and came every day to play with us.
Good afternoon, sir and madam.
Hello.
Hello, Valerie.
How are your mother and father? Very well, thank you.
My sisters were much younger. The twins, Muffy and Mouse, and Elizabeth, the pianist.
Good heavens! Whose filthy little children are those?
Yours.
The spirit of it is in the book, and the sensibility is in the book, but it's written for the film and for the voice of this beautiful woman with beautiful voice, June Hillman, who's not known. So many people in this movie made this movie and then we never heard from them again. They made a great film, a masterpiece, and then they didn't go on. This woman, I did a little research. She was known as June Tripp. She was a British revue performer. And she left that when she married into society and she became a big socialite. And then she moved to America. And I don't know how Renoir found him, but basically she had been retired from acting. But isn't her voice exquisite? The tone
Well,
in
her voice,
voice.
well, the voice is the reason why it works is because you think the voice is, when you look at photographs of Rumer Godden, you think that's what her voice sounds like.
I had to put on my shoes. The shortest way was over the garden wall. I'd taken it many times to visit Mr. John. Fascinating expeditions. Since the death of his wife, a beautiful Hindu woman, India had absorbed our neighbor completely. His house was full of Indian friends, Indian books, and Indian music. Often the sound of a veena came through the open windows. And he had a daughter, a little older than I.
She just captured it, the quality and the sort of richness and the fullness of what you imagine Rumer Godden's voice to be when you're reading that book.
It's the voice on the page, and it's the voice. It's true. It's the voice I hear when I'm reading the book. Captures it exactly, but captures also the sense of the character Harriet grown up, because it's the grown up Harriet who's talking to us in the novel and in the film.
As it is really it's the grown up Rumer Godden who is talking about her own childhood as
Exactly.
she grew up in India. But just to go back, just to stay with this narration for a second, because what we're talking about is a musicality in that voice. And the music, Renoir was so careful about the music for this movie. And he really relied upon Melanie, Radha, to connect him with musicians throughout India who would provide exactly the right music that he wanted. And I think, I don't know if people talk about the musicality in this movie, but I think it's a very big element, a very powerful
It's a
element.
very powerful element, and it had an enormous influence because one of the people on the set, sort of as an observer, was the about to be greatest of all Indian filmmaker Satyajit Ray. So, and then he made in 1953 Pather Panchali, Song of the Road, which is my all-time favorite film. I always tell students when I show the film, this is your teacher's favorite movie. It's an extraordinary film. But I didn't realize the influence that Renoir on Making the River in India had on this man who in a few years was to become the greatest of all Indian filmmakers. And Renoir's use of music, the sitar, had an enormous influence on the scoring of Ray's masterpiece. So the musicality is extremely important. But isn't it interesting that it was an outsider, a Westerner, who had an influence on an Indian filmmaker?
Because here's also, this might have something to do with it, because what Renoir does when they're writing the screenplay is he adds an Indian, or as it was called then, a half-caste Indian with an English father or an Irish father. I forget what Arthur Shield's character is.
Irish. But that character and her father do not appear in the novel.
No, they added that element, and he added that element specifically because he thought it was important. Now, just to put this novel in context, the novel was written, I think, a year before British independence, and so she uses none of she uses none of that in the writing of the novel. None of what's going on, the ferment that's going on in India. And the movie was made 3 years after independence.
And it's not referred to at all. And when would you say the story is set? It isn't specified, but I'm thinking it was written and published in 46, but it's about her childhood. Isn't it sometime in the 20s after the war after the First World War?
Well, it's after the war because Captain John has lost a leg in the war.
Then, as the river brought everything, it brought a young man on the weekly steamer.
Harriet! Melanie! He's come! Who? The American! Mr. John's cousin! I had a strange and make cup of tea this morning. I knew it's always right. Come, let's have a look at him. Come on. Shh, not too loud. Don't leave me. Don't leave me behind.
They're looking at something. Somebody's coming. Perhaps it's Nan the Stranger.
I hope Nan the Stranger plays bridge.
Elizabeth, come down.
We knew very little about him, but Nan had told us he was coming from America to visit his cousin, our neighbor, Mr. John. His name was also John, Captain John.
He's beautiful. Thank God. Yes, they can.
What kind destiny to have brought him all alone right to our doorstep. Usually visitors from abroad were old and married.
Another redhead. Harriet 1, Harriet 2, now there's 3. That means trouble.
As they disappeared into Mr. John's yard, we thought that he had a slight limp.
But the feeling in the movie is that it's the Second World War.
But it's never specified.
No.
It's never specified. The time is deliberately left vague. I see it as a period film, not as contemporary in the 40s, but as something that goes back to the 20s. And the costuming might reveal that or support that. It is a specified period, deliberately so.
Well, it isn't specified. That's true, and it is deliberate. But I think that, another thing that's interesting became clear to me when I was reading about all of this is that obviously Renoir was totally traumatized by what happened with Women on the Beach. Because as he was editing this movie, he was having many screenings. He was having people of all different kinds come in and look at this movie and react. And he was even having people fill out cards, which is not what you think or what you would imagine how Renoir would work. But he did this, and he realized that some people were interested in the English story, some people were interested in the Indian story, but that some people were interested in India, some people didn't want to know about it. But in some way, in a major way, doing it this way totally freed him up in terms of going ahead and incorporating bits of film, going ahead and incorporating the documentarian aspects of this movie.
Well, it's partly about life in India at that unspecified time period, and it's about that English family. So it's about two cultures that interact. And I suppose we really have to discuss this. It is very much set in colonial India, and it doesn't criticize the Raj.
We were 5 children, 4 girls and my brother Bogey, the only male among us females. Our family was very much like any other family. Still, I think living in India gave us a special flavor. Of course, in the family, we included Nan, our nurse, a few friends, our servants, and several pets. There was always chattering, laughter, piano music, songs. Time slipped away unnoticed.
Bogey, come back and learn your spelling like Elizabeth.
I don't like spelling. I like turtle.
One day you have to learn how to spell. Imagine a man who couldn't go to office and sign letters and read the newspaper.
I don't want to be any of those men.
It doesn't deal with the larger political framework at all.
No, it doesn't deal with the political framework at all.
Imagine that some progressives who might be indifferent to the glories of this film as a work of art would object to its political silence on certain issues. It doesn't deal with, in a direct way, with inequality or social issues or political issues or the need.
Well, I think it covers itself with the presence of Radha because here she is. She arrives. She's come from a Western school. She's dressed in Western garb.
I had to put on my shoes. The shortest way was over the garden wall. I'd taken it many times to visit Mr. John. Fascinating expeditions. Since the death of his wife, a beautiful Hindu woman, India had absorbed our neighbor completely. His house was full of Indian friends, Indian books, and Indian music. Often the sound of a veena came through the open windows. And he had a daughter, a little older than I.
Melanie, you've come at last. Yes, finished, Harriet. No more school.
And then you see her out of Western garb. She's in Indian garb.
My dear, for a moment I didn't recognize you.
You like it?
I do. You look so much like your mother.
She is, her thoughts and what she has to say and the way in which he says, well, the father says, well, perhaps you shouldn't have been born. And she said, but I have been born, and one day I will know where I belong.
Bigger jagger.
Good to chai.
No, it's not very good. But I like to do it.
It's part of your inheritance from your mother and your grandmother and her mother's mother's mother.
Why did you send me to a Western school?
Because you've a Western inheritance too. It's a puzzle. I don't know where you belong. Sometimes I think I've put you in a frightful position. Perhaps you never should have been born.
But I am born. Someday I shall find out where I belong.
That's coping with it.
That's
in the way
coping
that
with it in a way that is deeply rooted within the story. It's not imposed on the material. It comes out of the material. It's not an activist film. It's not a political.
no, that's not what it is not that, because
It's not
it is,
that.
there's a point in Rumer Godden's book where she says, when you left home, whatever that home is, if you see something, it will take you back to that home. If you see a certain shadow or a certain way a tree looks, you go back to that home. And this whole book is the embodiment of going back to that home. And that was really her subject, because she wrote many books about that. And she wrote a number of novels, which actually Knopf published with her sister, Jean Godden, that were on this subject of their childhood India.
And they were people of their time, and she wasn't focused on what has Britain done to India. She was focused on universal themes, growing up.
Harriet, come here.
Ever since Diwali, everything's been different. I feel so funny, as if I were being stretched. Nan says they're growing pains.
Perhaps Nan's right.
I didn't know it hurt to grow.
Harriet, how much do you know about life?
Life? Oh, you mean babies being born and growing up? Everything. But there are so many different kinds of love.
No, only one. From Cleopatra right down to you.
Did Cleopatra have a baby?
I'm sure she did. Dozens.
I never thought of that. Having a baby hurts you terribly.
No more than it ought. It's meant to make you think and feel, just like love. And as you know, Harriet, as you grow older, your body changes to get ready for it. I think that's what's happening to you.
To me?
Yes, Harriet.
I wish I were a cabin boy and could run away to sea. I wanted to be an explorer. I hate bodies.
Relations with her family, her first feelings of romance.
Yes.
kiss on her lips, terrifying and fascinating, burned into my heart and hurt. It was my first kiss, but received by another. I couldn't bear it.
Don't cry. Oh, you mustn't cry. I am going back.
I'm not crying because you are going. I'm crying because it is going.
It? What it?
This being together in the garden. All of us happy and you with us here. I didn't want it to change. And it's changed. I didn't want it to end. It's gone. It was like something in a dream. Now you've made it real. I didn't want to be real.
These are universal themes that just happen to be set in this extraordinarily colorful background. Wouldn't you say that that's what's going on?
बोगी बाबा कहाँ गया था? दिन पास शैतानी करता है। जाओ घर जाओ।